They found the logbook of the men who built the Great Pyramid. Not a myth, not a theory. An actual papyrus, the oldest papyrus ever discovered, pulled from a sealed cave at the Red Sea port of Wadi al-Jarf in 2013. It belongs to a man named Merer, an inspector of works, and what he recorded, in careful administrative script, is the daily movement of a gang of 40 men, their loads, their rations, their rest days, their complaints. They called their gang the Friends of Khufu. And on a particular morning in approximately 2560 BC, they were about to attempt something that should have been physically impossible. The year is 2560 BC. The Giza Plateau is not a monument. It is a construction site, the loudest, most crowded, most administratively precise place on the surface of the earth. The Pyramid of Khufu is not yet finished. It rises roughly 200 meters into the morning sky, already higher than any structure that will exist anywhere on Earth for the next 3,800 years. Its Tura limestone casing catches the desert sun and throws it back like a signal fire, visible from 100 kilometers away. 20,000 workers are here, not slaves. That is the first thing you must understand. Not the slaves of Hollywood. The workers of Giza were state employees, fed, housed, medically treated, and buried with honor when they died. We know this because we have found their village. We have found their bakeries and their breweries. We have found their bones, and the bones show healed fractures, surgical amputations, spinal injuries managed well enough that men continued working for years afterward. The Egyptian state looked after these men because it needed them alive and functional. Using Merer's Papyrus, the archaeology of the workers' village, and the physical analysis of the pyramid itself, we have reconstructed what one morning here actually looked like, felt like, and cost. Not the gold and the mystery, not the aliens and the conspiracy, the real Giza, rope and ramp in limestone dust, the smell of 4,000 loaves baking before dawn, the sound of 40 men breathing in unison on a rope, and the weight, the extraordinary, almost unbearable weight of a single block. You are awake before the sun. In the workers' village, a purpose-built settlement roughly 400 meters south of the Sphinx, the day begins in darkness. Your sleeping quarters are in a long mud brick gallery barracks, each approximately 35 meters long and 5 meters wide. 8 men share your space, no windows. The only light is a small oil lamp, throwing an amber circle across the faces of the men around you. The smell that greets you is bread. Specifically, emmer wheat being ground before first light, the yeasty heat of clay-domed ovens already running at full capacity, the slightly charred crust of the previous batch still cooling on the racks. The bakeries here were industrial in scale, capable of producing several thousand conical loaves per day. You eat 2 now, dipping them in beer that is thick, warm, and slightly sour, more like liquid porridge than anything you would recognize. You drink half a liter. On a heavy hauling day, you will burn upward of 5,000 calories. You are a member of the Friends of Khufu, 40 men. The foreman arrives at the barracks before full light. He carries a wooden tablet. He marks your name. Everything is recorded. Everything. The plateau in first light is nothing like the photographs. Step outside and the noise hits you before anything else. Several thousand men already in motion. The sound is the sound of stone hammers against chisels, sledge runners scraping gravel, ropes under load, and underneath all of it, a sound that is almost subsonic. The deep rhythmic call and response chant of hauling gangs. The foreman sings a phrase, 40 voices answer, coordinating the pull into a single unified force. The dust is already in the air. Fine white calcium powder from the Tura limestone casing blocks. It coats your tongue. It settles in the corners of your eyes. Men who have worked this site for years have it in their lungs permanently. Today your gang has been assigned something different. You are moving a granite monolith from the Giza harbor, floated upriver from the quarries at Aswan, 795 kilometers to the south, to its position inside the king's chamber, at a height of roughly 43 meters above the pyramid's base. The block weighs 70 tons. Sit with that for a moment. 70 tons is the weight of 10 fully loaded double-decker buses. It will be moved by 40 men, a wooden sledge, papyrus fiber rope, and a technique refined over decades on this very site. No wheels, no pulleys in the modern sense. Physics, rope, and the collective strength of human bodies. You are one of those bodies. The block is already on the sledge when your gang reaches the harbor basin, a man-made channel cut into the limestone plateau to receive the Nile barges, its line still traceable today as a buried depression running north from the Sphinx enclosure. The sledge is acacia wood, one of the hardest timbers available in Egypt. The granite block is secured with braided papyrus rope, approximately 12 centimeters in diameter, each capable of bearing several tons of load. Your inspector positions the gang, 20 men on the main drag ropes at the front, 10 on stabilizing ropes at the sides, 10 on braking ropes at the rear. A dedicated team moves ahead of the sledge laying wooden rollers, short sections of smooth acacia log. Behind the sledge, another team retrieves the spent rollers and runs them forward again. A constantly renewed track of wood. Before the first pull, a worker steps forward with a clay jar. He pours water directly onto the sand ahead of the runners. This is not ritual. This is engineering. A wet granular surface has approximately half the frictional resistance of a dry one. We know the Egyptians understood this because a tomb painting at Deir el-Bersha, dated roughly 6 centuries after Khufu, shows a man at the front of a sledge pouring liquid onto the surface ahead. The physics have since been confirmed by experimental study. The foreman raises his arm. He sings. 40 voices answer. The ropes go taut. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing. He sings again, louder. The gang leans further in, and then a creak. A sound like the earth itself protesting, and the sledge shifts a centimeter, 2, then it is moving. The route from harbor to pyramid is roughly half a kilometer of prepared ground, compacted limestone gravel, maintained specifically for this purpose. With a standard block, your gang covers it in 2 hours, with 70 tons longer. Every meter is negotiated. You are on the main rope, weight committed at a 45-degree angle to the ground. The rope presses against the cloth pad on your shoulder. Within 10 minutes, the skin beneath is burning. Within 20, it is moved past burning into a place your body simply accommodates. There is no comfort here. There is only the next step. But here is what the mythology of the pyramids almost always forgets. This is not a silent, enslaved trudge. The Merer Papyrus records, with evident satisfaction, when his gang completes their quota ahead of schedule. He records blocks transported per trip, rest days taken, fresh rations delivered as reward for performance. These are not the records of a slave driver. They are the records of a project manager proud of his team. And the men themselves left their own record. In the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, spaces never intended to be seen by any human eye after the pyramid was sealed, the builders left graffiti. Scratched into stone in proud hieratic script, it reads, "The Friends of Khufu, the Drunkards of Menkaure," team names, boasts, the marks of men who knew they were building something permanent and needed to be part of it. These men were not building someone else's monument, they were building their own. While this gang was hauling rope on the Giza Plateau, 3,000 kilometers to the east, the city of Mohenjo-daro was at the height of its power. 80,000 people behind baked brick walls, streets on a perfect grid, a city-wide sewage system, standardized brick dimensions across a territory larger than modern Pakistan. Neither civilization knew the other existed. Both were solving the same problem, how to organize tens of thousands of people toward a collective purpose, entirely independently. And arriving at answers more similar than the distance between them suggests. The block reaches the pyramid base around midday. The sun is now a physical pressure. The white limestone casing on the lower courses is almost impossible to look at directly. The stone of the base radiates heat upward like a slow oven. Work stops. This is not weakness. Moving a 70-ton block up a ramp in direct midday heat with a fatigued gang and loosening rope fibers is more dangerous than the pause costs. Your inspector marks the rest on his tablet. You sit in the shadow of the block itself, the only shadow wide enough for several men, and you eat bread, beer, dried fish. The bone deposits in the workers' village middens show primarily Nile perch and catfish, distributed as part of the standard worker ration. The ramp. This is the problem that has consumed engineers and Egyptologists for 2 centuries, and it remains genuinely unresolved. A single straight ramp rising from ground level to the pyramid's apex at a practical hauling gradient would need to be approximately 2 kilometers long and contain more material than the pyramid itself. It would take longer to build and demolish than to build the pyramid. Your gang does not know which theory future archaeologists will argue over. They know only what is in front of them: limestone rubble, tafla clay, and a ramp surface kept wet, level, and clear by a dedicated maintenance crew. The block begins to rise. On a gradient, you are fighting gravity directly. The rope bites harder. Your legs, already trembling from the morning, find something beyond tiredness and operate there. The foreman's chant slows, building between each pull instead of driving through it. You respond without deciding to. Your body has become part of the machine. Halfway up, the block stops. A roller has split. Compressed beyond its tolerance by 70 tons, the acacia log has cracked along its grain. 3 men drop their ropes and clear the fragments. A fresh roller goes in. The rest of the gang holds the load on the braking ropes, legs braced, teeth set, preventing the block from reversing the 20 meters it has just climbed. The delay is perhaps 4 minutes. To you, it is significantly longer. The block reaches its position as the sun drops west and the pyramid's shadow falls across the plateau like a slowly moving hand. The stone fits, a gap of less than 2 millimeters on each face. The surveying that preceded this moment, carried out with plumb bobs of stone, set squares of wood, and sighting lines from star positions, has placed the prepared socket to within a tolerance a modern builder using laser levels would be proud to match. The foreman marks the placement on his tablet. He marks your name, present, block delivered, quota met. Tomorrow, there will be another block. You walk back to the village in a group. The men around you are from different parts of Egypt, conscripted for a rotating term of 4 months, drawn from villages along the Nile from the Delta to Aswan. The man on your left has the broad, slow vowels of Upper Egypt. The man on your right speaks the fast, clipped dialect of the Delta. You cannot know it. But the act of building this pyramid is also the act of building something else, a national identity. Perhaps the first time that the idea of being Egyptian, not just a subject of a local lord, but a citizen of a unified civilization, is felt in the bodies of ordinary people from every corner of the country, working together, eating together, buried in the same style of tomb. The village at dusk smells of bread again, fresh batches in the ovens for tomorrow's dawn, acacia smoke from the cook fires, and underneath both, the river, carried on the north wind, cool and mineral and old. You eat, you sleep, you do not think about legacy. So that was a morning on the Giza Plateau in 2560 BC. Not the mystery, not the mysticism, the real pyramid. Rope and ramp and rock, 40 men and a 70-ton block and a foreman with a papyrus tablet noting down everything that happened. The Merer Papyrus, that small, fragile scroll from a sealed cave at Wadi al-Jarf, overturned a century of assumption in a single season of excavation. It gave us names, rations, rest days, and delivery quotas. The mundane, magnificent reality that these were not slaves, but workers who called themselves the Friends of Khufu and left their names in stone in spaces no one was ever meant to read. The pyramid contains an estimated 2.3 million blocks, built in roughly 20 years. The mathematics of that, one block placed every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day, for 2 decades, tells you something about the scale of organization required that no photograph can communicate. The word pharaoh comes to us through Greek and Hebrew from the Egyptian per-aa, meaning the great house. Every time you use it, you are speaking a word 4,500 years old. The 365-day calendar the Egyptians used to plan the flooding of the Nile and rotate the work gangs is, with modifications, the calendar you used this morning to check the date. And the next time you see a building rising floor by floor against a city sky, understand that the logic underneath it, organizing human labor into gangs, rotating them on schedules, feeding them from centralized kitchens and recording everything, was worked out on this plateau, in this dust, by men whose names are still legible in the stone. They built for eternity. The stone has kept its word. Thank you for watching. Reconstructing a morning like this one takes weeks of cross-referencing archaeological reports, primary papyrus sources, and experimental engineering data, because the difference between getting it right and getting it wrong is the difference between history and myth, and this channel is here for the former. If you want to keep going deeper, subscribe and leave a comment below. One question I keep coming back to after this: if the Merer Papyrus survived sealed in a cave for 4,500 years, what else is still out there? What ancient world should we reconstruct next?